A schoolboy won't let go of the bus driver. When he finds out why, he calls 911. Imagine a quiet morning as the sun peeks over the horizon. A school bus pulls up to a street, and out steps Mr. Henry, a man in his 60s with a warm smile and gentle eyes. For years, he's driven kids to and from school, making sure each child feels safe and welcome on his bus. He's a familiar face in the neighborhood, someone the kids trust and look forward to seeing each day. For Mr. Henry, driving the school bus isn't just a job. It's a way to connect, to make a difference, one small greeting at a time. Among the kids on his route is a young boy named James. James is quiet, not the type to cause any fuss. He's the kind of kid who politely says good morning and thank you, keeping mostly to himself. Every day he gets on the bus with his little backpack and sits near the front, close to Mr. Henry. They've developed a simple routine, a silent understanding. Mr. Henry looks out for him and James seems to take comfort in that. Lately though, Mr. Henry has noticed something different about James. He's quieter than usual, if that's even possible. He avoids eye contact, his head hanging lower each day. There are dark circles under his eyes, the kind you don't usually see on a young child. Mr. Henry senses something is off, but he doesn't pry. He figures it might be school troubles or something that will pass with time. Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. But this particular morning, there's an even heavier air around James. He steps onto the bus slowly, as if each step takes effort. His face is pale, and he clutches his backpack tightly, holding it close like a shield. Mr. Henry offers his usual smile and soft, "Good morning, James." But today, James doesn't respond. He just slides into his usual seat, his small body pressed against the window, his gaze distant, almost lost. As Mr. Henry drives along the familiar route, picking up other children, he keeps glancing back at James in the rear-view mirror. There's an uneasy feeling creeping into his chest. He's seen a lot over the years, but something about James today feels different. It feels urgent. Little does Mr. Henry know, this quiet boy sitting alone on his bus is carrying a heavy burden, a secret he hasn't shared with anyone yet. As the bus pulls up to the school that morning, the usual flurry of movement begins. Kids jump out of their seats, grab their bags, and hurry down the aisle, laughing and calling to each other. But James remains in his seat, still as a statue, his gaze fixed on something only he can see. Mr. Henry notices immediately. Once the bus empties, he walks back to James, crouching down beside him. He speaks gently, his voice low and calm. "School's here, James. Time to head inside." But James doesn't move. His small hands are clenched tightly around his backpack straps, his knuckles white. He shakes his head slightly, his face pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. There's a tension in his eyes that Mr. Henry has never seen before. It's as if he's bracing himself against some invisible force, something too big for his young shoulders to bear. Mr. Henry waits a moment, then tries again, softly encouraging him to join the other kids. But James only presses himself deeper into the seat, almost shrinking away. Without a word, he reaches out and wraps his arms around Mr. Henry's neck, holding on as if he's afraid to let go. The gesture takes Mr. Henry by surprise. In all his years of driving this bus, he's never had a child cling to him like this, with such intensity. James's small body is trembling, and Mr. Henry can feel his heart racing. He gently pats James on the back, whispering comforting words, hoping to ease whatever fear is gripping this little boy. But James doesn't respond. He only holds tighter, his head buried in Mr. Henry's shoulder. Minutes pass, but to Mr. Henry, this feels like hours. He glances out the bus window, noticing the school principal watching with a curious expression. Mr. Henry gives a reassuring nod, signaling that he's handling it. But deep down, his own heart is pounding. He doesn't know what's wrong, but he knows one thing for sure. James is scared. And whatever it is, it's something serious. Something that's left this little boy too terrified to step foot off the bus. Mr. Henry holds James gently, feeling the boy is trembling, calm, just a little under his hand. He keeps his voice low and soothing, trying to create a safe bubble in that same small space on the bus. He tells James it's okay, that whatever he's going through, he doesn't have to face it alone. But James says nothing, keeping his head down, his grip around Mr. Henry's neck unyielding. After a while, James's voice comes out, barely a whisper. "I'm scared." His words hang in the air, fragile and heavy. Mr. Henry's heart aches, feeling the weight of those two words. He keeps his hand on James's back, a steadying presence, silently urging him to keep going, to trust him. James pauses, his breathing shallow, like he's searching for the courage to say more, but afraid of what might come out. Mr. Henry doesn't push, only waits patiently, giving James the time he needs. Slowly, haltingly, James continues, his voice barely audible. Home is hard. His words come out like pieces of a puzzle, each one filling Mr. Henry with a deeper sense of concern. He can feel James's grip tighten as he says those words, and as if just speaking them out loud could make everything real, make it even harder to bear. The bus feels strangely quiet, the usual hum of children's voices and laughter replaced by this heavy silence. Mr. Henry's mind races as he pieces together the little James has shared. This isn't just school stress or trouble with friends. It's something deeper, something that has seeped into every part of this young boy's life. Gently, Mr. Henry tells James that whatever he's facing, he doesn't have to be afraid alone. James doesn't respond with words, but his shoulders ease ever so slightly, a small sign that he's hearing Mr. Henry's reassurances, maybe even beginning to trust them. They sit there together in the stillness of the empty bus, a quiet connection forming between them. Mr. Henry can feel the unspoken pain, the unshared burden, and it's clear that, for this boy, holding it all inside has been too much. Mr. Henry sits quietly with James, feeling the weight of the boy's silence, as if it's filling the bus itself. The hum of the engine is the only sound now, steady and soft. James's grip around Mr. Henry loosens slightly, though he stays close, his head still down. After a few moments, James shifts, his small voice barely breaking through the silence. "I don't sleep well," he murmurs, almost as if he's talking to himself. Mr. Henry leans in a bit, listening carefully. He doesn't respond right away, letting James's words settle, hoping they'll lead to more. James stares at the floor, his hands twisting together in his lap, a nervous energy coursing through him. Mr. Henry watches him, sensing that something important is about to be revealed, something James has kept buried. After a long pause, James speaks again. This time his voice even softer. There's fighting. Mr. Henry's heart aches at the world. It's a small word, but coming from James, it feels enormous. He waits, his hand still gently resting on James's back, steadying him, giving him space to continue. James takes a shaky breath, his eyes glistening as he stares at his small hands. "Sometimes Mom cries," he whispers, his voice breaking. Mr. Henry's heart tightens. In that moment, he realizes this isn't just the usual childhood fears or troubles. This is something more serious, something no child should have to carry alone. The silence between them is thick with unspoken words, with pain too big for such a small boy to hold. Mr. Henry doesn't say anything, sensing that his presence, his silent support is what James needed most. James seems to be gathering himself, as if summoning the strength to go on. After a long, deep breath, James adds, "I don't know what to do." His voice is small, filled with a hopelessness that chills Mr. Henry to the core. The boy's shoulders slump, as if the weight of his words has drained him. Mr. Henry's mind races, piecing together the fragments of James's story, feeling the depth of the burden this young boy has been carrying. They sit there in the quiet of the bus as a heartbreaking truth begins to unfold, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably real. Mr. Henry sits beside James, absorbing the quiet pain that's wrapped around this small boy. He can feel James's tension, a kind of worry that no child should bear. Mr. Henry's mind races, but he keeps his voice calm and steady, telling James he's safe, that he's not alone. The words seem to sink in, and James finally looks up, his face a mixture of fear and relief. Just then, Mr. Henry gently assures James that it's okay to share whatever he's carrying, that sometimes speaking up can help. James's lips quiver, and he takes a shaky breath, as if deciding to let go of the heavy secret he's been holding onto for so long. He whispers, almost too softly to hear, that his dad gets angry, that sometimes his mom tries to protect him, but ends up hurt. His voice fades, but the fear in his eyes says everything. Mr. Henry's heart breaks as the pieces fall into place. He keeps his hand steady on James's shoulder, showing him that he's here, that he cares. They sit in a deep silence, and slowly, James's breathing steadies, as if a tiny piece of the burden is lifted. Mr. Henry gives him a reassuring nod, letting him know he's done the right thing by sharing. With a quiet resolve, Mr. Henry reaches out for help. Soon the quiet of the bus is interrupted by the soft arrival of caring adults. People who know what to do, who are trained to handle these situations. A police officer kneels beside James, speaking gently, his voice filled with reassurance. They tell him he's brave, that they're going to make sure he and his mom are safe. For the first time, a hint of hope flickers in James's eyes. Days pass and things begin to change for James. His father is taken away, and both James and his mother are connected to the support they need. Each morning as James boards the bus, Mr. Henry is there with his warm smile. And now James smiles back. A real smile. One that says he finally feels safe. As they settle into their seats, Mr. Henry feels a deep sense of gratitude that he was there to help, to listen, and to be the one person who made all the difference for this little boy who simply needed someone to hold on to. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.